This presentation uses photographs in my travel journal from a 2.5-week vacation in May 2017. We had a hectic run-up to the vacation with the grandchildren staying with us for a few days and then a final exam in my French class the day that we flew out. One of my bucket list goals I made the year I retired was to travel around France and be able to speak the language. I've used recitation learning discs previously and found myself stymied in conducting everyday conversation. So I thought a language class would be helpful, and it was. This was our 4th trip to France, but the first one where we spent most of the time out of Paris. I think it will show in the photographs that are taken that this is one of my absolute favorite things in the world, is traveling with my darling Sharon. This slide shows an overview of the logistics of the trip. It is basically a clockwise trip or circle around France from Lyon to Paris. I planned our trip using Rick Steves' book and extensive searches on the internet. We fly into Lyon via London, arriving on May 10th. We stay in Lyon for 3 days before picking up a rental car at the train station and driving east to the Dordogne River Valley. We stayed 2 nights in the old town area of Serlat while in the Dordogne. We then drive north to the Loire Valley and stay in Amboise for 3 nights. From there, we drive north to Bayeux on the Normandy coast for 2 nights. We tour the American D-Day landing beaches there and the American Cemetery. We then drive to Mont St. Michel to overnight on the island for 1 night. The next morning, we drop our car at nearby Saint-Malo and take the train to Paris. We spend 4 nights in Paris. While there, we take a day trip to Chartres to see the cathedral. We fly home via London to take advantage of our VA companion ticket. After lengthy delays in London and further delay getting bags in Lyon, we find our driver we had booked online still there waiting for us at the airport. After checking in at our hotel and a quick shower, we head out to the pedestrian Bourchon area near our hotel. Bourchon means a stopper in a jug, and it was used to describe hole-in-the-wall restaurants that fed the silk workers in the silk industry days of Lyon. We grab a table at Bourchon Colette and order one of the famous dishes of Lyon, salade lyonnaise. It is terrific, and a nice entree to the food of Lyon. We walk back to the hotel and sleep 10 hours tonight. After showers in the morning, we walk to a local coffee shop for coffee, croissants, and quiche for breakfast, and then walk across the bridge to Vieux Lyon, or Old Lyon. We met our tour leader for a free walking tour of Lyon at St. Jean Cathedral. The pictures above are of our lunch spot today and us in front of one of the murals near the end of the walking tour. That's the one on the right. The restaurant, Le Vent Jaune, means yellow bellies. We enjoyed a wonderful fixed price lunch. While there are tourists about, it is nothing like Paris, and it seems like we are truly mixing with the locals, and I'm enjoying using my French. Lyon was the center of the silk industry in France during the Renaissance. These narrow covered passageways called triboules were used for transporting silk between the shops out of the rain. Later, during World War II, they were used by the resistance to evade the Nazis. Many of these triboules have doorway entrances along the narrow streets. It is quite a beautiful and interesting city and tour. In the afternoon, it starts raining more heavily, so we go back to our hotel to rest and read. These pictures were taken at dinner at Dordogne and Loire River. It's quite a popular spot that I found on the internet. This is the most jovial and happy restaurant meal I can recall. The owner and chef is a riot. You can see him over Sharon's shoulder, leaning over at a table in the picture on the upper right. He comes to each table and describes the menu in broken French English and is very funny. Later, when we leave, he gives us a tour of the building and its triboules. During our meal, we talked to an elderly French couple next to us who eat at their restaurant twice a week. They speak little English, but we are able to converse between the languages. Delicious and inventive food, an absolutely stunning meal and experience. After supper, we walk along the St River and enjoy the beautiful lights for which Lyon is known. They have a light festival here every year. The pace of the city is relaxed yet vibrant, with many restaurants and large numbers of people out eating and strolling the streets. Although the forecast is for a dry morning, we are roosted out of our room by a fire alarm and find it's raining. We walk to breakfast and then walk through the daily market, always enjoyable for us. After buying day metro passes, we ride the funicular to the top of Fouvier Hill. The funicular is the world's oldest active railway line. At the top, we tour Notre Dame Basilica, a 19th century tribute to St. Mary. The dedication of her statue was the start of the annual Festival of Lights in December. Afterwards, we take the metro to Musée des Beaux-Arts. It has a lovely courtyard and is a surprisingly fine museum. We have a light lunch and then rest in the hotel during a heavy downpour with lightning. We then head back to Old Lyon for a rose sorbet and macaron ice cream to round out that light lunch. We walk around Old Lyon and then stop for a rosé under an old beautiful tree in a square. After this, we walk around some more to find a welcoming Dordogne. We like the look of the owner and daughter standing out near the door. We dine under a warming lamp under the outside and enjoy a good but not remarkable meal. All of the photographs that follow are of Sarlat, our destination, after a long, rainy drive from Lyon. The picture on this slide is of the square inside the walled city. The day starts as we finish our breakfast and check out and take a cab ride to the train station to pick up a rental car from Enterprise. We are upgraded to a larger car with onboard GPS, which proves invaluable as my GPS maps are outdated. The drive out of Lyon is tense, and construction en route causes us to cycle through one area half a dozen times before we finally figure out the right exit. En route, I read Amy's very touching Mother's Day tribute to Sharon. We arrive in Sarlat around 4:30 p.m. on a busy Saturday market with limited parking. We figure out the right parking area and walk to the hotel inside the walls of the old city. Our hotel hosts are welcoming, and our room at Villa de Consols is lovely. After getting the bags to the room, we walk to our dinner reservation at L'Adresse. Great meal, best so far. We enter tired and leave full and happy. This is a shot taken after dinner, of a restaurant that looked inviting to us, and we dined in the following evening. These are a couple shots of the old town taken after dinner. What a gorgeous and romantic place. A bright and sunny morning at last. We have breakfast in the square and then drive to Castelnau. It has a fascinating history. The castle changed hands 7 times during the 100 Years' War between the French and the English. This is a shot of the view from the entrance of Castelnau, looking down the Dordogne River valley lined with medieval castles. The museum is quite impressive with extensive displays of medieval weaponry and warfare. I particularly like the light in this shot taken in the castle kitchen. Another shot of a valley that drains into the Dordogne River. This was taken from, again, Castelnau. What a gorgeous area and beautiful day. After Castelnau, we drive to La Roque and have a pleasant lunch on a terrace overlooking the Dordogne River. Afterwards, we do some shopping, then walk up to a small church. Next, we drive to Benesse. What an impressive perch for the castle, 150 meters up a sheer cliff. It's easy to imagine life in the castle. Not luxurious, but they were designed exclusively for defense. The castle overlooks a lovely medieval village that is a delight to see. This is just another view of Benesse, again taken from the other side near the car park. Another view of the valley, this time from Benesse. One of the interesting parts of the history of this particular castle is Richard the Lionhearted was one of the early barons who lived here. After our tour, we drive back to Surla and enjoy a glass of wine in the square while listening to a singer and watching people. For dinner, we choose the welcoming-looking restaurant shown in the previous slide, a nice end to a wonderful Mother's Day. We have a quick breakfast at a friendly cafe near the hotel and head out to Lascaux. These shots were taken along the way. The one on the left is of geese at a foie gras farm. The area is known for foie gras and is everywhere on the menu here, including rich servings on my salad yesterday. We arrive early at Lascaux. The paintings in the cave are no longer open to the public. The tour is of an exact replica of the cave paintings and is a magnificent tour and museum. It starts showing the valley as it looked almost 20,000 years ago when these paintings were made and had a climate similar to Alaska or northern Sweden today. The cavemen who made these paintings were quite intelligent. Early man had migrated here and were trapped by the last ice age. Trapped from migrating back, I should say. To have survived 6 months of winter required a great deal of ingenuity. I think the artists were trying to convey that the animals would return in the spring to keep their spirits up through the long winter. This is just my theory. They didn't offer one, and they really don't know what the cave paintings were to convey. Many of the animals depicted are now extinct. These paintings are of wild horses. The colors are incredibly vivid and look like they were recently painted. We tour two more ice caves, but cannot take pictures inside. One of the caves required about a 3-hour journey into the location to where the cave paintings were made. An intriguing day look back thousands of years into the art of early man, well before man arrived in North America. I'm so glad I made this part of our trip to see the ice cave paintings of this area. I positioned the car below the hotel, where it's easiest to roll the luggage. Then we have a breakfast at a cafe before hitting the road. As we check out and say goodbye to our host, we tell them where we are going today. She tells us her uncle was one of those murdered by the Nazis in Dordogne. We lunch in town near the site and then make our way to the village memorial. Under orders of Charles de Gaulle, the village was left exactly as it was found after 642 citizens, largely women and children were slaughtered by the Nazis here on June 10, 1944. The museum is sobering and informative, although filled with school children. Nearly every child in France will tour this facility. The Nazis surrounded the town and killed most of the men along the streets and in the shops. The women and children were rounded up and put in the church, nearly 400 of them. Only 5 people managed to escape and survive the slaughter. The church still has many bullet holes where the women and children were machine gunned after they had set the church on fire. Absolutely horrific, but a valuable reminder and memorial. We arrive at Amboise around 6:30 and check in to Hotel La Croix Amboise in a quiet ground floor room in a separate carriage house next to the main hotel. Perfect place and close to restaurants and the chateau. We head out to enjoy the late afternoon sun and a glass of wine before supper. The chapel on the left side of the road in the distance is where Leonardo da Vinci is buried. Dinner is at a small restaurant with about 8 tables. It's my favorite place we ate during this trip. We can see and hear the husband cooking just off the dining room and are waited on by his wife. The food is wonderful and ambiance is perfect. This is our starter and a shot of the menu from the chalkboard. Food is quite inexpensive in France. My best guess, it costs about half, perhaps a bit more, than a comparable meal in Houston for similar quality. Most every meal is a delight. The weather is forecast for rain later in the week, so we decide to take in some of the most outstanding chateaus today. After breakfast of croissants and quiche, we drive to Chenonceau. It is a glorious day, and the walk in down an alley of trees is a great prelude to the outstanding building and land architecture to come. This is a cottage on the grounds that houses the florist workshops. The grounds are stunning, and to me, the most impressive part. The fresh flower arrangements throughout the chateau and buildings are all grown in the gardens and made here. The flower arrangements are exquisite. A couple of pictures taken in the interior of the chateau. The one on the left is a portrait of Diane de Poitiers, mistress of the king, who resided at Chenonceau. She was responsible for many improvements, including the bridge extension over the river. She was well educated and cultured and extremely intelligent. A few more shots showing flower arrangements and the royal bedroom. We had a delightful lunch at L'Orangerie restaurant overlooking a secluded lawn near the chateau. I am very pleased with my French, as I am able to converse entirely with the service staff in this restaurant in French. What a great meal and day. After lunch, we arrive at Giverny around 3 p.m. and do the tour of the house. Giverny is impressive, but not nearly as grand as Chenonceau. It was a chateau known for its hunting. The picture on the left is one of the children's bedrooms. The hunting dogs were well into their afternoon snooze when we arrived. We decided against staying for the feeding at 5 o'clock as we were tired, and so around 4:30 we head back for a 1-hour drive back to Amboise through a heavy thunderstorm. Dinner tonight at Lyon d'Or. Great food, but a stuffy, pretentious atmosphere that doesn't suit us. The picture on the left is outside of our room, described earlier. The one on the right is my morning coffee today to accompany strawberries and quiche. There's a 100% chance of rain today. We walked to Amboise Chateau on the hill overlooking the river. Lots of school groups touring today. Most places we visit this trip, we encounter school groups. Leonardo da Vinci spent the last 3 years of his life in Amboise serving King Francis I and is buried in this small chapel near the chateau. This picture of the Loire Valley is taken from the Amboise Chateau shortly before it commenced raining. The cloudy skies do not do this beautiful town and valley justice. One of the inventions in this castle is the spiral enclosed pathway used to bring construction materials and then later other goods into the chateau. We then take a short walk in the light rain to Leonardo da Vinci's home in Amboise, Chateau de Cleulus. The gardens are shown on the left and a dramatized painting of his death on the right. The painting hangs in his bedroom where he died. His study and workshops are fascinating and show his genius. His notebooks and sketches are incredibly detailed and intricate. He made many instruments and models of his inventions. We have seen his paintings in several museums and they are astounding. But his study displays his absolute genius. We have a nice lunch that's on the pathway back to our hotel in the pouring rain. After lunch, we venture out into that rain, walk back, and do laundry and dry out in the room. Tonight, we return to La Fourchette for dinner. This was a wonderful day, so reads the start of my journal today. After breakfast, we drive to Valandre for a tour of the chateau and magnificent gardens. We are clearly in a good mood and found an interesting way to take our pictures in one of the bedrooms. The gardens are truly astonishing, but they are not my taste. I prefer the flowing and natural English style to the formal structured style of the French gardens. The staff required to maintain such immense gardens even today is quite large. We drive to Azul-la-Rideau and have a beautiful meal near the town square. Afterwards, we walk through the town and buy some locally made macaroons that are to die for. The chateau tour is nice. Afterwards, we buy some pillows and cards from the gift shop and have a nice conversation, mainly in French, figuring out the name for the chestnut tree, Monsieur. On the way back, we stop at a regional wine outlet and taste 3 wines and buy a semi-dry Vouvray. Dinner at La Alliance is quite good, but with few patrons. Desserts are exceptional. We are out on the road at 9:30 and arrive at Bayeux at 12:45. We'll have lunch in a creperie and then head to the Tapestry Museum. To me, the famous tapestry is somewhat disappointing. A 900-year-old tapestry telling the story of the Norman invasion of England is quite amazing to contemplate. Viewing wasn't that inspiring to me. Central Bayeux is lovely, as depicted in this photo here. The cathedral, to me, is the star attraction of Bayeux, far more so than the much more famous tapestry. Our hotel, La Lyon d'Or, is interesting and a place where many famous people have stayed and left signed pictures, which are on display in the bar. Edith Piaf, Eisenhower, Kennedy, Tom Hanks, and Charles de Gaulle, to name a few. We are up early today and after breakfast meet our guide, Eric Turnbull, at the front desk. He had 2 relatives, including an uncle, die in the Normandy invasion. Another uncle, badly injured in the war, lived nearby and told him all about the war in his youth, and thus started his lifelong interest. This photo is at the back of the famous church at St. Mère Église, depicted in the film The Longest Day. Unfortunately, the incident depicted didn't happen regarding the paratrooper who was stuck on the steeple. Eric is full of information and stories. One that was striking to me is of a soldier on Omaha Beach. He felt a sharp pain in his thigh and thought he had been shot. It was a thumb. I had to include this shot of the hedgerows that caused so much delay in breaking out of the beaches. Seeing them made all the difference in understanding. They were first built by the Romans and are high stone hedges topped with thick and thorny hedgerows. They could not be pierced by tanks and created a perfect defense for the German troops and their machine gun batteries. This is a view of Omaha Beach from the American Cemetery. The most striking feature of the beaches is the scale. They stretch over 64 miles. Fascinating tour that radically changes my perception of the landings, but not the heroism. This is the memorial on the American Cemetery. The statue symbolizing American youth reaching up for freedom is very moving, as is the entire memorial area. No one who visits the American Cemetery here will ever forget it. The land, about 600 acres, was donated by a French woman. No American soldier is buried on foreign soil. Walking through the rows of crosses and stars of David and reading the names and states is incredibly sad and humbling. After breakfast, we pack overnight bags for Mont St. Michel, separate from our suitcases. We depart about 10 a.m. for Dordogne. We park near the town center and walk into the historic medieval town. Many of the shops are closed till noon on Monday, but we enjoy walking around this beautiful town. We find a restaurant near the church and eat outside and have a nice conversation with a young French couple. We arrive at Saint Michel around 3 p.m. and park in a huge parking lot and take a packed bus to the tidal island. This is one of the most visited sites in France. It is absolutely packed with tourists and will be until the tour buses start leaving around 4 or 5 p.m. This picture is actually one of my favorites, and it was taken about sunrise the next morning, and it's just a stunning place and sight. Our room is not ready so we leave our bags and get an ice cream. The hotel is shown in the picture on the left, or at least the entrance to it. After checking in, we start our climb up 40 flights of stairs to the Abbey and take a tour. That's the Abbey at the top on the right. This time lapse shows the tide coming in. Only at relatively high tides is the island completely surrounded by water. At times, the water comes in at a speed faster than a horse can run. This is an active abbey. Construction started in the 700s and was mostly constructed between 11 and 1400. This is a panorama I took at the top showing the bay and chapel. When we come down about 6 p.m., it's a different place with all the tour bus crowds gone. It's magical. We have dinner at Mère Poulard. The Normandy oysters are very cold, salty, and flavorful. The entrees are omelets, a local specialty. Before dawn, I walk down to take pictures of the island at first light. We check out early and take the shuttle bus to our car, then drive to Saint Malo, check in the rental car at the train station. We have a poor meal on the train and arrive at Mont St station around 3 p.m. We take a cab to Hotel La Motte Paquette near the Eiffel Tower. We drop our bags and take the metro to the Arc de Triomphe. We take the 288 steps to the top of the Arc de Triomphe and enjoy the magnificent views of Paris in all directions. The scale of this monument is much larger in person than it shows in any of the pictures. I like the shot of us with the Eiffel Tower in the background. We made the trip to the top of the Eiffel Tower last time we were in Paris. The ceremony at the Tomb of the Unknown is quite moving. We take the metro back to our hotel. We have an odd meal tonight. We buy some champagne pâté at a shop and a classic baguette recommended by the shop clerk. We enjoy this with chilled Vouvray we bought at Amboise, then walk down to Rue Leclerc and have decaf coffee and dessert, apple tart and tiramisu for dessert. I'll show a bit of the ceremony at the Arc de Triomphe now. After our breakfast at a local cafe, we walk first to the Rodin Museum. This is a picture taken that morning as we were crossing the Seine. The gardens at the museum are lovely, with lots of fragrant roses in bloom. Of all his works, I think The Six Burghers of Calais is the most impressive. It's the one on the right. To save the city, the burghers volunteered to give their life. This is them marching out. Ultimately, their lives were spared. Rodin was a quite prolific sculptor. These are a couple of his earlier pieces. Afterwards, we walked to the Musée d'Orsay, my favorite museum. We first go to the restaurant, which I expect to be crowded, and are seated without a delay. If we'd waited much longer, that wouldn't have been the case at all. The food is good, and the room is incredibly ornate and beautiful. What a great setting for lunch. After lunch, we tour the museum. A few photos that follow are from our tour. The temporary exhibits are only okay. The Impressionist paintings have been moved to the 5th floor. Today's tour is not the same magical experience as our last time here about 10 years ago. After the museum, we take the metro back to the hotel and make a reservation tonight at Patoka. We are lucky to be able to get in at such a late date. It's a small restaurant a short walk from the hotel. We both have a shoulder of lamb entree with cherry cafluti and glazed nut and sorbet side. A fantastic meal. It's a sunny, beautiful holiday day in Paris. We take a taxi to Montparnasse train station. It's jammed with people leaving Paris for the long weekend. There are no manned ticket counters. We manage the electronic ticketing and grab a coffee and a Danish as we wait for a train. We rush to the train when it's announced and find a good seat for the 1-hour train ride to Chartres. The train is standing room only today. We first go to the cathedral. There's a special Ascension service at 11 a.m. We stay for it. The Eucharist is piped in by bagpipes. There are many Boy Scouts in attendance. This is a very moving experience for me and brings back strong memories of my mom. I feel her presence so much it brings tears to my eyes. Chartres is a most beautiful cathedral that was dedicated in 1260, and it's famous for its blue stained glass windows. We have a wonderful lunch on the square at Café Bleu. The weather is spectacular, warm in the sun and cool in the shade. After walking around, we have profiteroles and espresso, since dinner is at 8 tonight. We catch the 3:30 p.m. train back to Paris. A long metro ride to Chef Jean Tou's place for dinner. We are the first of 13 guests to arrive. Jean won the 2012 MasterChef contest. He then left his 20-year career as an architect to start his at-home restaurant. After champagne with mango, we have an Asian fusion starter. Entree is a duck cooked the French way with no blood, although quite rare. Dessert is a structure made of macaroons with taro-flavored whipped cream and tropical fruits. Although social, this is not what I had hoped for. Too touristy with no one from France at the table. We then take a taxi back to the hotel and then take a walk to see the Eiffel Tower at night, and then back to the room about midnight. That is our first course. Unable to sleep in the morning, I go down to check in and print boarding passes. We have breakfast on Rue Leclerc and then decide to metro to the Manet-dominated Marmottan Museum. Afterwards, we walk back towards the metro and find a nice local cafe and enjoy a nice lunch, roasted chicken for me and toasted cheese salad for Sharon. We rest for about an hour in the hotel, then pack and head out for a glass of rosé and then a meal at a recommended local bistro. One of the nicest features of our location is walking down Rue Claire, checking out the local shops, and stopping for a glass of wine to watch the world go by. This is a favorite area for Parisians as well as tourists. In bed tonight, about 10 for a 4:30 alarm and early taxi to the airport. In London, we depart about 10:40 a.m. due to a computer systems failure. Later, we learned that all BA flights after 11 today were canceled due to the computer problems at Heathrow. Lucky to be one of the last flights out today, we are blessed to be able to enjoy such a wonderful trip.